Hi, my name's Joe Emmett and I play drums for the Amazons. We're on tour with Dirty Honey right now across America, and I'm going to show you some of the drums, cymbals and gear that I'm using at the moment. I'm using a Birch Janista Premier kit in black to purple fade sparkle. I'm lucky enough to be endorsed by Premier Drums, and when I was kind of selecting the kit, I was talking to the guys at Premier in the UK, a guy called Colin, and he wanted me to kind of find a particular finish that wasn't really being used by any of the other drummers already on the roster. They like to have a real kind of spread of the finishes, and one of the things that they're really great at is you won't see a lot of kind of custom made kits, because all of the players on the roster are playing the drums that are available to buy, which I think is really important from an endorsement point of view, because if people are seeing you play a particular kit, they want to be able to get it and want to be able to afford to be able to buy it. So I think that's the really great thing about Premier. So sizes of drums I'm using: the rack tom is a 13 by 10. The kick I'm currently using is a 24 by 18, which is a monster. And then I've got a 16 by 16, and I usually on a UK setup I'd have an 18 by 16 as well, and I also have a 10 by, I think it's a 10 by 9 or something, maybe kind of a real small kind of auxiliary rack, and then I would also have another auxiliary snare, which is a 14 by 8. It's a real deep kind of sounding snare, which I tune kind of fat and have a big fat snare donut on it to kind of give it a completely different sound to the other snare that I'm using. My main snare that I've been using kind of all of this year is a Ludwig Black Beauty. I can't remember exactly what year it is, but it's one of the newer ones. I think it's from maybe it's like 2003 or something like that. But they're really roadworthy. You can tour them everywhere, and I just don't think there's any snare for me that comes close to the kind of the attack and when you get it tuned right, it just sounds like a shotgun. But I should, as I mentioned before, I should probably also mention that I use a Premier snare as well. But this is the one that I currently use on tour, which is a 14 by, I think it's 6.5. I think it's a 14 by 6.5. And I've had this snare since I was about maybe like 17 or something. I'm 30 now, so it's been with me for a long time, and it's a trusty weapon, I'd say. I'm using a Power Stroke P77 coated on the snare. I find that for touring purposes, the durability you get with a P77, it lasts longer. I like the thickness of it because it's pretty versatile. You can either tune it down to like a low tuning, or you can tune it up and you still get the kind of pop or like a ring kind of like Bonham sounding snare with it as well. It doesn't have to be a thin snare. Because I use quite big sticks, the durability of the P77 seems to be the best one for me. I was using the controlled sounds before, but I was going through those too quickly, so this is kind of the head for me. On the rack and floor I'm using, on the rack I'm using an Emperor coated. When I was talking to the guy that texted for me back in the UK, we really struggled before we went to record our latest record, Future Dust, to find the right heads tonally for these drums, and we played around with a few different ones, but the Emperor coated on the rack, and then the vintage Emperor on the floor tom seemed to be the best we could find to get the most out of the drums. I quite like warm sounding toms. Live I tend to dampen them quite a lot because it gives a bit more control to the front of house guys, especially in these kind of rooms. I mean, this room we're playing at the moment is kind of like a box full of concrete, so you want to give him as much control as possible. And I use the same on the bottom of these as well, because we found that using the same heads top and bottom, you're getting the same amount of kind of air pressure in the tom. If you have a lighter head on the bottom, we kind of found that, you know, it just didn't sound quite right. So they're exactly the same coated on the bottoms as well. As you can see on the toms and some of the snares, I've got moon gel, which is readily available for dampening toms, but I also use this. It's called a snare weight. You can get them in various different sizes and thicknesses and different types of leather, and it's essentially a leather strap that then just clips onto the rim of there. You can, you know, they're great on the snare as well if you want a bit more of a kind of dampening on the snare. They're pretty drastic in what they do. You can actually get some half-size ones as well if you didn't want kind of quite that much dampening. I can do a quick demonstration of kind of how it works. So you've got, like, let me take the moon gel off and then you get a real tone of sense of it. So without the moon gel on there, and then as soon as you've got that on there, you've got that. So it's pretty drastic, I mean, but it's great. I like it on the tom because quite honestly, when you're touring like we are, like loading out and loading on quickly, and as a support band, you don't have that much time to kind of sit and fiddle with the tunings loads. So to kind of be able to put that on there and to get it to sound half decent in a quick amount of time, I think they're really great. They're pretty readily available, I think, in the States. I actually got this from a guy called Joe Cox, who's the drum tech for Catfish and the Bottlemen, and he also does a lot of vintage drum restoration. Go onto his site, but you'll end up spending loads of money basically, because the stuff he has, you want all of it. Moving on to cymbals, I'm currently endorsed by Zildjian. I actually moved to Zildjian last year. I was with Sabian, but I wanted a lot darker cymbals than what I could find just from personal preference with Sabian. I'm using the 14-inch Carope hats, and the great thing I quite like about the Caropes is that they don't come as pairs. They're all almost individual cymbals, and you can choose the weights basically. This is a 970 gram, then I've got 1,180 gram on the bottom, so that's the actual heavier one. But if you wanted two lighter, you know, cymbals that kind of were a bit crashier, then you could find two lighter ones. And I kind of like that you're not buying a pair. You can really make your hi-hat sound individual with the Caropes anyway. On the left here, I'm using a 20-inch dark crash, thin crash. I switched between that and the sweet crash of the same size, depending on which one's not broken. And I think my cymbals on this side tend to be a bit heavier and darker, so that's like a really nice, when you're getting the two crashes, they blend really nicely together. As my ride at the moment, I'm using a 22-inch custom medium ride. I interchanged that as well with the K ride, because I crash my rides quite a lot, so I tend to interchange that depending on how I'm feeling. But I like this because it's got more of a ride sound to it. The ping and stuff on the rides better for this run anyway. And then all the way over here, I'm using a custom dark crash 20-inch as well. As I said before, I like the blend of tones between that and this one. So as well as the actual drum shells, I'm using all Premier hardware. It's their top of the range. I think I can't remember the model number of it exactly, but it's their heaviest heavyweight hardware that they do. Similar with the kick pedal, you can't see it. I've actually used a bit of skateboarding grip tape on the kick pedal, which I learned that trick from Joey Castillo, who was the Queens of the Stone Age drummer and is now drumming with the Bronx. And it's great for festivals especially in the UK, if you're walking around a muddy festival site and you're going on to play, and even just putting your change of shoes on at the side of the stage, you'll get wet and muddy. So I find a bit of skateboarding grip tape just helps to control that. The sticks I'm using currently are these Cool Breeze, which are the Abe Cunningham signature models. I've really struggled to find the right stick for me, but Veta, I was talking to the Veta reps in the UK, and I went from 5.5 BBs, which I found I play quite high up the stick. If anyone's seen someone like Elan Rubin, who drums with 9 Inch Nails, he kind of holds the sticks quite high up as well. And I was finding that my hands were sliding down the stick, and I was ending up with like holding it like that. Now, you might say it's bad technique, but that's just what was happening. So then I moved on to like the 1As, which is what Elan Rubin uses, and just couldn't find like I was getting enough weight from the stick with the 1As. So I was talking to the guys at Veta, and they suggested to use these Abe Cunningham ones, the Cool Breeze stick, and it is like the perfect stick for me. It's got the additional length, and then it's also, they're quite heavy, they're kind of quite heavy weighted on the end, so you get the weight from behind the stick. It doesn't feel like all the weight's in the bottom of it. So that's what I love when I'm playing. I like to be able to feel the weight coming forward on the end of the stick. So they're the ones I'm using currently. And then I'm using the Throne is a Porter and Davis BC2, which I haven't got currently plugged in, but ever since we moved on to using in-ears for our tour as the monitoring, I was told by lots of different people to try a butt kicker, and once I used it, there was like no going back for me. I mean, I absolutely love this thing. I love the feel it gives you. You can dial pretty much anything into it. You can dial the bass into it if you wanted. You can dial the toms into it if you wanted. The snare, if you've got the auxiliary snare I was talking about, if you've got a deep snare, you can get that going through it. But generally speaking, I just like the kick to come through. I don't use any subs or anything behind me for that feel, so this gives me everything that I need from that. Yeah, at the moment it's in repair, which is heartbreaking for me. Yeah, we're going to fix that in the next couple of days for the rest of the tour. But yeah, the BC2 Porter and Davis drum throne made a real difference to me when we moved over to in-ear monitoring. And talking of in-ear monitoring, the in-ear monitors we use are UE, and these are the UE 6s, I believe. We tried various companies before, and we were actually at South by Southwest festival in Austin, and in one of the kind of artist lounges there, they were doing free implants for these, for UE. And we got our implants taken and tried some of them out, and the quality, the only company I've had of in-ears that haven't break. I sweat quite a lot when I play, and some other ones I found kind of let the sweat into it and just destroyed the drivers. But these, even the cabling, the sound quality of these are absolutely brilliant, and yeah, I wouldn't use anything else for our in-ears. We're on tour with Dirty Honey at the moment around the US. We're currently in Chicago. As the Amazons, we have 2 records out, but for the US, we've just released Introducing the Amazon, which is Introducing the Amazons, which is a compilation of our first and second records, only available in the US, to give people a better understanding, because this is our first tour of the United States. We want people to be able to listen to what we think is the best representation of us as a band, as you get to know us.